Welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Raghav Jagannathan. Welcome to this ILTA KLSE webinar on synchronizing NetDocuments content with Microsoft SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive using Microsoft Copilot. I'm Raghav. I've been in the industry for just over a couple of decades now. I speak at a number of different conferences, including the ILTACon conference over the last several years, as well as recently at the Microsoft SharePoint Copilot Symposium, as well as I'll be speaking at a number of different conferences that are coming up very soon. I'm also a pretty active contributor to ILTA. I contribute a fair bit of thought leadership articles on AI, as well as on synchronization aspects between DMS, like NetDocs, for example, with Microsoft ecosystem. So feel free to check out some of my articles that I've contributed to ILTA at that URL, as well as scan these QR codes for my contributions to the ILTA peer-to-peer magazine. I'm also the founder and CEO of a company called KLST. We are a global software and services company primarily focused on servicing law firms, working around 32 AM law firms, around 26 mid-sized firms, and 6 general counsels of Fortune 100 companies. We are known in the industry as SharePoint experts, and more recently as Copilot consulting experts as well. I'm also the founder and CEO of a company called Clobot, which is a legal tech software-focused company focused on creating AI-powered products like the one we are looking at today called netDocShare. All right, so why netDocShare? netDocShare basically lets you, specifically the Sync product, lets you bridge the gap between NetDocuments and Microsoft 365. So as I walk you through this, we just want to open up a quick poll question, around 3 questions for you guys to help us understand the profile of the audience, what sort of concerns and issues and maybe features that you might be looking at when it comes to synchronizing content or copying content between NetDocuments and Microsoft 365 ecosystem. If you can please respond to those 3 questions as I walk you through this slide, that would be appreciated. Basically, a netDocShare Sync really focuses on enhancing your collaborative experience, your workflows, basically bridging the gap between NetDocuments and the Microsoft 365 services like SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive. Basically, what we can do, and during this brief webinar, you would see how I show you a number of different use cases where you're able to seamlessly copy content from NetDocuments to SharePoint in this specific demo, but you can also do the same thing with Teams and OneDrive, and how you can then surface and unleash Microsoft Copilot agents within that platform to surface intelligence on that content. And beyond that, we'll also explore some other capabilities around surfacing or searching within NetDocuments right within Copilot. And I'll show you some examples of how we are driving that innovation with our netDocShare Teams app. The top 5 reasons why typically people use netDocShare Sync, most customers use netDocShare Sync, can be summarized in these 5 points. Primary usage for netDocShare Sync for the last 6 years has been, look, we want to surface or share NetDocuments content with users who may not have access to NetDocuments, especially in a corporate legal setting, like corporate legal trying to share content with non-legal users like HR, marketing, finance. Or within law firms, the law firm basically trying to share or copy content from NetDocuments workspace into a SharePoint document library. So to leverage some of the Microsoft co-authoring tools, or to also somewhat minimize, or more than minimize, really address the requirements from users to collaborate in Microsoft technology, like Microsoft Teams. We want to live in Teams, and we want to collaborate in Teams, but we want our work product to get automatically copied into NetDocuments, which is our record-keeping document management system. So basically, promoting the seamless collaboration between 2 platforms has been and is still the #1 use case for netDocShare Sync between NetDocuments and Microsoft 365 services like SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive. The second use case, which has more recently come up, is business continuity, to make sure that you can back up critical documents from NetDocuments, especially the last 60 days modified or my recent or my active matter workspaces from NetDocuments into SharePoint, so that if there is a service outage in either systems, then you have a backup that you can go to. And with SharePoint, you give the ability to provide, basically provide the ability to do self-service. So attorneys don't need IT to basically find an information, find a document related to a matter, because that you can simply use SharePoint search for that. One more use case we've looked at is inactive matter workspace offboarding. So things like, for example, if a matter has been closed for the last 5 to 10 years, and if it's still sitting in NetDocuments, that could be consuming that premium storage in NetDocuments. So you have the ability to move that with netDocShare Sync, move that files and folders from NetDocuments into SharePoint, which is a much more cost-effective storage option, so they can free up that premium storage in NetDocs for new matter onboarding. And today's session is all about Copilot. So really surfacing that NetDocuments content within SharePoint, especially if you tick the boxes on the first 3, you now can leverage Microsoft Copilot, which almost a lot of law firms use today. But now you can use it to surface intelligence, reason on NetDocuments content. And my demo is going to show you how that works. And last but not the least, our most popular use case for netDocShare, which is the migration from network shares into NetDocuments. That netDocShare Sync is one of the very few software products, in fact, we're the only software product that can migrate terabytes of data from network shares within record-keeping times from network share into NetDocuments. And we didn't want to quite stop there. We've seen usage scenarios for law firms who are not moving really old matter workspaces or folders from network share into NetDocuments because of the premium storage issue. They're simply copying into Teams or even SharePoint. So our tool also supports the ability to migrate content from network share, not only to NetDocuments, but also into Teams and SharePoint. So you can switch off those network shares once and for all. All right, so let's have a quick look at our demo. The first demo that I want to show you is how netDocShare Sync actually works. How does it do a bidirectional one-way sync between NetDocuments and the Microsoft 365 ecosystem? So to do this, I'm going to go into my demo here. And I'm logged in here to our netDocShare Sync tool. So before I do a quick demo of netDocShare Sync, I just want to kind of give you guys a little bit of sound bites, maybe a little bit technical sound bites on how netDocShare Sync actually works. The netDocShare Sync deploys in 2 versions. You have the ability to self-host it, which a lot of highly regulated industries, especially we work with a lot of corporate legal as well as public sector or high, law firms that represent those public sector kind of bodies. So those kind of firms are very sensitive about where and how the content's processed. So you can self-host netDocShare. So netDocShare can securely live within your tenant, within your Azure tenant or your Windows server. So the whole sync process can be boxed and self-contained within your network. Or for customers, we also offer the netDocShare Sync hosted service that we host it. Again, depending on your region, either you're in the US or Canada or Europe or Australia or New Zealand or any of those regions, we have nodes where a netDocShare Sync is hosted that you can consume. But once you decide on the strategy or which option you want to go with, self-hosted or hosted by netDocShare, you basically will get an interface that looks similar to this. So with netDocShare, we can set up many different types of sync jobs. So you can see here I have a sync job that is a bidirectional sync job. So bidirectional sync job by design means that I can copy content from NetDocuments into SharePoint, and I can copy the content from SharePoint into NetDocuments. So collaboration can happen in either direction. So we'll look at, in this specific demo, we're going to look at bidirectional, but we also have other sync jobs like the netdocs to SharePoint or SharePoint or netdocs, and the same thing applies to Teams and OneDrive, where you have the ability to just do a one-way sync. And that could make sense, especially if you're not looking to collaborate with other users, you're simply making it available to that party. For example, netdocs to SharePoint, we see a lot of our clients using it for client extranet purposes. So their client extranet is hosted on SharePoint. So they are simply pushing the content from netDocuments workspace, creating a folder in the workspace called client shared or client files, and they're simply sharing those files through netDocShare sync, copying it to the SharePoint extranet document library. And the same thing applies to Teams and OneDrive, as well as we have some other sync types here. For example, we have the sync type called netDocuments and netDocuments. We're like copying and moving within netDocuments, where you can copy files between netDocuments workspaces as well, or between cabinets or between tenants. You can move cabinet content between tenants as well. But today's focus, we are really focused on showcasing how you can do a bidirectional sync of netDocuments content with SharePoint, and then simply unleash a Copilot agent to surface an intelligence. So what we're going to do here is, you can see here I have a netDocuments kind of mirrored site. It's a SharePoint site called netDocuments DR, and I have a document library here called DR Beta Industries. And within that document library, I have some folders and files. I have two PDF files, and also have a folder called drafts with possibly one document, also a PDF file. Also, notice that I have an agent created here, which I'll show you guys later how I did it and so on, and how the agent works. But this is the other source I'm going to copy content from. So I have a netDocuments workspace called CO2 Beta Industries, and I have a folder within that called Beta Industry Docs that I'm simply going to do a bidirectional sync. You can see here I have a folder called Pleadings, and I have a couple of documents within that, and I also got some documents, a PDF, a Word document, and an Excel document or whatnot. All sorts of different document types within this location. So let's go back to our sync tool and basically kind of parse through some of the settings here. So the sync type is bidirectional. I can always give an optional name to the sync job. The sync job is going to run for every 30 seconds. You can control it to run every 24 hours. And whatnot. You also have the ability to copy metadata columns, which could be very useful. Let's enable that for now. And what that lets you do is basically copy metadata columns from netDocuments into SharePoint, like client matter numbers, for example. Remember, the better structured data you feed Copilot agent, the more smarter it becomes, the more intelligence it can surface. So you have the ability to copy those metadata columns that you have in netdocs also into SharePoint. For example, if I say yes to that, I can map the metadata columns from netDocuments. You can see here I have a client column in netdocs. I can simply add them as a SharePoint column, and I can start mapping those columns. So I can bring that metadata along with the document. I can also bring in the metadata into SharePoint. Again, the better structured data you feed Copilot, the more smarter it becomes. You almost certainly want to apply permissions, because if you apply for this demo, I'm just going to skip that. But basically, almost certainly I want to apply permissions as yes, because you don't want users who access netDocuments content, you don't want to accidentally expose it to users who are not supposed to access the content in SharePoint. So apply permissions basically lets you apply permissions as it exists in netdocs in SharePoint. Now, one might ask, oh, so why do you have an option that is no for apply permissions? We give that option because you might want to copy content from netDocuments into SharePoint or Teams to share content with users who don't have access to netdocs. For example, external parties, like your clients, your client extranet, for example. Those are scenarios where you don't want to copy netDocuments permissions into that SharePoint document library. Update date timestamps also copies over all the date timestamps. So for example, if you want to use a Copilot agent in SharePoint to reason on or ask questions on who created this document, for example, or show me all the documents created by a specific user, you want to copy the modified by, the created by, the created, modified dates into SharePoint so you can preserve that. So here I've pre-filled some of this just from a time perspective. So you can see here, pre-filled the SharePoint location, and I'm going to simply go ahead and select all the files here, except for the agent. And I'm going to select all the files on this side, basically telling the sync job that, look, I want to copy everything in this location, in this beta industry docs folder into SharePoint, and I want to copy all the selected files from SharePoint into NetDocs. And that's it. So that's like that. I've set up a sync job that's now going to basically run behind the scenes and copy the content, bidirectional copy the content between the two sources. Obviously, I did not do any column mapping, so it's not going to copy any metadata columns, but we'll wait for that job to start. Right. So while we're waiting for it, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a couple of things here of how an AI agent can be created. So we're going to prep that AI agent while we wait for this job to complete and bring the content over from NetDocs. All right. So let's just check on that job. Obviously, I'm doing a real-time demo here, so it's going to start in a few seconds. And so while we wait for that, you have in SharePoint, you have the ability to basically have the ability to create an agent. These agents can be easily kind of created by clicking on the AI actions. Now you might ask me, okay, so how do I get access to these AI actions? So if you don't see that, it means that your firm is not licensed to use Copilot, right? So you would need a license to Copilot to see this AI actions come up in the toolbar in SharePoint. So once you have the AI actions, you simply click on create an agent. What that lets you do is basically lets you create an agent automatically here so that you can let the agent reason on learn the content that is in that SharePoint document library and reason on it, right? So before the demo, I went ahead and created an agent. I created the agent called DR Beta Industries agent. And when you click on the agent, it will simply open up in the web version of Copilot. Now, it doesn't have to be the web version of Copilot, because once you create an agent in SharePoint, in a SharePoint document library using AI actions, this agent is now available to you across the board in any Copilot UI. So it doesn't have to be the web version. If I switch over to the Teams version of Copilot, which I have here, you would notice that if I click on all agents, my DR Beta Industry agent is also waiting for me here. Okay, so while we wait for the sync job to complete, I want to kind of show you a few more things here. So let's go back and check on a sync job. All right, so it's already started. It's doing its thing. Using NetDocShare Sync, I can always check the activity log to see what's going on, what files have been copied, in which direction, right? And I can also have a view log that lets you see the logs in a great detail. All right, so let's have a look at that. So let's have a look at our SharePoint site here. Let's refresh it and see what sort of content is flowing through. You can see here, content started flowing through from NetDocuments into SharePoint. So I have a fair amount of data getting copied over. Right. So I'm just gonna get rid of some in here, right? And you can see here I have some content that was in this location, like Contosil LLP commercial lease agreement, Julie Larson, all that stuff has started getting copied into SharePoint. All right. So, and if I go and refresh on the NetDocuments site, you would see that some content from the SharePoint site also gets started. It's basically doing its thing right now. All right. So while we wait for that process to happen, our agent is also learning in the background. So as documents are getting copied back and forth, especially from NetDocuments into SharePoint, this agent that I added here in SharePoint is also learning those documents real time. So it's basically analyzing a document. So I can start asking it questions. For example, I can see here there's a document related to this matter, Julie Larson matter, that I want to ask this agent some questions on. Let me refresh this. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to simply go and ask a couple of questions. So I can see one more kind of document here called Glossy Bridges, Oklahoma. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to simply go into my agent. So the way I access the agent is within Copilot. And I'm going to simply ask a question with this to summarize the document, let's say in 50 words or less. something like that, right? So this document, remember, came from NetDocuments into SharePoint. So this document used to be NetDocuments. Because of netDocShare Sync, we brought that into SharePoint and now have the ability to, I created an agent in SharePoint. The agent's kind of learning the data as the documents come into SharePoint. And now I'm trying to ask a question on a specific document that came from NetDocuments using Copilot agent within SharePoint. So just like that, it gives me a quick a summary of that specific document. There you go. And it also puts a citation to the document back to SharePoint. Okay. So that's our first use case of how netDocShare Sync does this thing where it's synchronizing content between the two systems. You can see it finished the synchronization. I can always check the activity log and see what exactly happened, right? And now I have the ability to basically synchronize the content, and not only synchronize content, but also reason on the content, surface intelligence of that content using Copilot. Now, if you remember the top 5 things, the takeaway I talked about in my slide, what we're going to do is we're going to show you something really cool here, where I'm going to open the document in SharePoint and start editing the document, right? So let's open this document. This is a Microsoft Word document, and I'm going to open this in Microsoft Word. And while we are waiting for that Microsoft Word document to open, we're going to open up a couple of poll questions. If you guys can please respond to the poll question here, that'd be of help to us, just to get real-time feedback of how this webinar is going and what sort of value you've seen so far. All right, so let's have a look at our Copilot agent right here. So we are in Microsoft Word, right? So we have this lease agreement open. And what we're going to do here is have Copilot open up on the right. And again, you would need Microsoft Copilot license to do this, right? And right within Copilot, as it opens up here, there you go. Within the settings toolbar, I have the ability to access all my agents that I've created. But for the purpose of this, you can see here, there are 2 options here: allow editing of the document or chat only. So I'm going to say allow editing of the document. All right. So what we're going to do here is go ahead and discard those changes. All right, we'll reopen the document. Let's do it again. All right, so make sure that there's no changes on this document. Just going to reject this. We're going to do this real time. All right, so let's save it. Let's go back to our home, and let's open our Copilot agent within Microsoft Word. All right, so what I'm trying to do here is basically show you a use case where a document came from NetDocuments into SharePoint using netDocShare Sync. And what we are going to do here is we're going to work on the document in SharePoint, basically use the co-authoring tools in SharePoint and Microsoft 365, and use Copilot to edit the document, basically use Copilot's ability to edit the document by giving it a really smart prompt. So what I'm going to do is this is a commercial lease document for New York City. So what I'm going to do here is I have a predefined prompt here that I'm going to copy. And I'm going to simply ask it to go and update all the sections here within this document that aligns with the latest, the newly published New York City rental control laws. There are rent control laws that's been recently published. I'm going to simply ask it to go through the document using Copilot and edit or update the sections. And because I have, let's say, track changes on, and because I track changes on, I would be able to see real time these updates being done by Copilot. All right, so we'll as you can see, Copilot is basically searching the internet because I haven't really fed it any context document to get those latest New York clauses. But you can see here it started kind of doing those updates. So let's see here, because I didn't have track changes on, it probably did the updates already. But the point here is that let's just save this document. Let's just make a change here. All right, this is in bold. And let's just save this document. It's also done the changes here. It's doing the reasoning as we speak. And it should be updating the document in a minute. Okay. Okay. And it should go ahead and make those changes to the document as we speak. So because we're running out of time here, so I just want to show you how, I wanted to show you how you can have a document in SharePoint that actually we bought over from NetDocuments that I'm opening in Microsoft Word using Microsoft Copilot to edit the document, basically doing inline editing, not getting recommendations, is inline editing of the Microsoft Word document. And there you go, it's doing those updates as we speak. And there you go, it's finished the update. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to simply save this document and exit this document. Okay, so because I've exited the document, now this document is incremented in version, and because a bidirectional sync job is running behind the scenes, you would see that our sync job will eventually pick this document up and copy that back to NetDocuments, right? So the key takeaway here is that you have the ability to, with the bidirectional sync, you can bring the content from NetDocs to surface intelligence on those content within SharePoint using an agent in SharePoint. And you can also edit those documents in SharePoint using Copilot, like inline editing capabilities with within Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and simply have the netDocShare sync behind the scenes synchronize that content back to NetDocuments. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch over to the last demo I have, which is our agent that you can also surface in Copilot. So with our agent called netDocShare Teams app, this agent can, which is coming very soon, this agent can be surfaced right within Copilot. So all the things that I did of syncing a content from NetDocs into SharePoint, and then having that intelligent agent created in SharePoint to reason and surface intelligence on the content that I copied over, you don't have to do, most of the steps can be skipped by using our netDocShare Copilot agent. Let's briefly look at it. So let's open back up Teams. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go to Copilot and use our netDocShare Teams app, which is an agent that surfaces right within Copilot, and ask a like a search, like a question, which effectively is synonymous with a semantic search. All right. So we'll let Copilot load for a second, and I'm going to use this beta version of the app that's coming soon. And what we're going to do here is we're going to simply ask a question, which is, if you remember, I had a document for Julie Larson. I'm just going to simply ask a question here. Do we have a document related to Julie Larson? Right. So this should go back to NetDocs. Basically, does a semantic search, and it should come back with a context. Okay, so it's asking me to quickly sign in here because we are in beta. So let me quickly sign in into this. All right, so it recognizes who I am, so it needs to understand who I am, obviously, because it can only bring back documents based on my access. So let's replay this back. And this now should be able to kind of go through NetDocuments, look at the current user context of all the documents that I have access to within NetDocuments across multiple cabinets, multiple workspaces. And it should bring back matching documents related to that specific matter, which is Julie Larson. Okay, so it says document found. All right, so it's bringing back the file within Copilot, and it should bring back a citation. There you go. Okay, so it's brought back a citation for me. So I can simply click on this file, and that will just open up right within NetDocuments. With the ND Office, the document will just open up right within Microsoft Word. All right, so it'll check it out if you have the right access. So this shows an example of how you can use semantic search within our Copilot agent, the netDocShare Teams app agent, to find the information from within NetDocuments. This is coming soon. It's just not there yet. We are waiting Microsoft approval of our app, and it should be coming very soon. All right. So I know we are right on time here. So I'm going to leave my contact details. We have a lot of questions being posted on the chat. So we will tackle those questions as a post-webinar follow-up. But I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for attending the webinar. Hopefully you found it useful. You can scan that QR code if you're interested to have a follow-up conversation.